Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode in our new Naked Truths series, Canine Conversations as They Should Be. So today we are delving into the world of essential oils for dogs. And I have with me via Zoom, the wonderful Zoom, Rachel Knott, who runs a company called Animal Matters and specialises in supporting dogs and their guardians with any kind of issues that they might be having, any concerns really, Rachel, because you work with both behaviour and health ailments, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Rachel is a practitioner of what she calls botanical self-healing. Got that right, haven't I?
Mm-hmm.
And I do know that you originally did study zoopharmacognosy, didn't you? And then you've specialised and you've created your own way of working with that technique called botanical self-healing. And Rachel is actually an absolute minefield of knowledge on how we can support our dogs using simple things like essential oils. And I've got lots of questions, Rachel, as well. So I tell you what, do you want to just sort of tell us a little bit more about you and how you got involved in this special work?
Sure. Yeah, so I've been working with dogs for it's probably over 20 years now. And it started off with rescue dogs working at Battersea, and then I ran a daycare, home boarding. And because I encountered a lot of stressed dogs, or what I now understand was stressed dogs, I really wanted to learn about behaviour. So I went and trained with a lady called Sheila Harper and studied about dog behaviour, calming signals and all of that. But my dog, it was probably one dog specifically, my dog Bridget, I was really struggling with. And despite all the behaviour work, I felt like I was just hitting a brick wall in her reactivity, her itchiness, her fidgetiness, all of these things. And I remember as one of the workshops, Sheila brought in Caroline Ingraham, who pioneered applied zoopharmacognosy about 30 years ago. And she ran a workshop 10 years ago with Sheila. And I just remember that penny drop moment of watching her offering essential oils to this one dog who had a history of aggression, and how beautiful it was to watch the dog guide the process on what it was he needed. And I'd never heard of this before. So it was life-changing for me. It was one of those moments where you thought, I've come home, I get this, because it makes complete sense. It really was something I'd always been looking for. So I trained with Caroline Ingraham, and then I just went on and really dove into essential oils and hydrosols and really wanted to understand them more deeply, because obviously I had the background with the dogs and the behavior. I really wanted to deepen my knowledge and connection with aromatic plants and how they were actually helping the dogs and us, of course. So yeah, it's been a long process getting here, but every dog that I've met on the way has just made me see things from a very different perspective. And it really has opened up a whole new conversation I now have with dogs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. And I love that, because it really is allowing them to guide, as you said, the session when you work this way. So you're really listening, but not so much in the sound sense. It's learning to observe them in a different way, in terms of what they're trying to communicate over to you. And one of the things that I'm quite keen on, you guys watching this getting an understanding, is that things can shift and change within a session. So, it's not that we're looking at essential oils as lavender is this magical relaxing oil. We're looking at essential oils as lavender presented could actually really change things for the dog in a certain amount of time, change their emotion, how they feel, and then they might never need that again. So it's a different way of working with essential oils, the way you work, which I think is really lovely.
Yeah, I think the key for me is recognizing that the dogs are individuals, and how they will experience an essential oil is unique to them.
Yeah.
So that's why it's really beautiful for us to actually get to know the essential oils and the hydrosols ourselves, because then we get a deeper appreciation of yeah, lavender may be relaxing for one person, but for you, actually may be a stimulant, or it may make you feel sick, or yeah, you know, you may have all of the, or you may have an emotional response to it. So that's why it's so key for the dogs to guide us, because they, of course, they innately know what it is they need. They've been self-medicating since the dawn of time, so this is innate in them, and it's innate in us. Of course, they don't have a filter, do they? They don't have they don't intellectualize it.
Yes.
So they literally are responding, of course, selecting that. I mean, they're not thinking, okay, lavender is grounding and it can reduce inflammation. They're literally responding to what is there in the moment and energetically, whether they be selecting it for a physical imbalance or something, some sort of trauma from the past, or in the moment, an emotional challenge or stress, whatever it is, they know in that moment. So it's a very fluid process, and it's also it really helps. I think the most beautiful thing for me is the dogs, because they so innately know, and they will express their needs in different ways through body language is obviously the most obvious one, but they can really give you information about what's going on for them as well. So a lot of dogs will.
Okay, you seem to have lost.
I think we froze.
That's okay, you're back.
My internet was unstable. Where did I get to?
You were discussing how the dogs communicate to us, and how we are able to read what the dog is trying to say.
Yeah, so what can happen is that we can get a lot of information about what their dogs are telling us through the aromatics. So, for example, if you have a dog that's showing reactive behaviors, if they're being reactive to other dogs, you may consciously think, oh, well, you know, the dog's stressed, or the dog's had some sort of trauma. But actually, when you hold a session with a dog, they may select something like ginger or wintergreen or yarrow, and one of their main properties is analgesics, anti-inflammatory. So you're like, okay, maybe the dog is in discomfort, and that then, of course, they've selected those aromatics and they will help them. But then it gives the guardian information to maybe then go on and work with someone that works with the biomechanics, or of course take this information to the vet. So it just works on so many different levels, opening up the conversation, and it always helps bond. It always helps really tighten that bond. I think not just because you're offering aromatics and you're honoring their innate ability to self-medicate, but because you're creating that space of listening. And rather than, I think one of the key things I learned was when I was working in dog behavior, when I was training in dog behavior, it was very much I was working on the dog. I was trying to fix the dog, make something go away. And really working this way, I just had to change that. I coming into a session saying to the dog, I'm here to support you. How can you help me help you? As opposed to, I need this issue to go away, or I need to fix you, completely changes how the dog responds, because they're like, oh, she's listening. So they can essentially, the aromatics work both on a physical, emotional, spiritual level, but they also act as a conduit to help us develop a better relationship with them. And then, of course, the dogs sometimes select stuff for us. I've had it where I've gone into a session and the dog has selected one oil and then left the room. And at this point, I didn't have a clue that this could happen. And I was like, why? But he doesn't want to inhale it, but he's picked it out. And then I've offered it to the guardian, and they're like, oh, I love that oil. So it really, you could go down the rabbit hole with it. It's endless in the way it can help our dogs.
It doesn't surprise me that owner and dog often need the same thing. Not cool. That happens all the time with myself and Fusa. In fact, recently we had a kinesiology session, or I did, and afterwards the practitioner said, why don't we just quickly test Fusa through you? So we were able to do that, and I was the surrogate for her. And I didn't know what they were testing at all, and it came back that she needed the same thing. So I thought that's so interesting. You know, we really do, I think we don't realize how connected we are to our dogs. And you know, they are so close to us all the time, in our aura, picking up what it is that's going on for us as well. Yeah.
The funny moment for me was when I was training with Caroline, and my life then was very stressed. I was a very stressed person, and I remember offering my dog at the time, Baxter Weimaraner, who was quite stressed. Of course, we were running a daycare, we had dogs coming and going. You know, my life was chaotic, and I remember offering him, I think it was Roman chamomile, and I was like, why aren't you inhaling it? You're stressed, you know, and my whole energy was just in conflict with what I was trying to support him with. And he was, I mean, yes, he would inhale it and he'd relax a little bit, but it was only actually when I started to work with the aromatics myself as well, did I see a really big shift. Because even though if our intention is to help our dogs and we're offering the essential oils, they're still working with us too. It's inevitable, even if it's unconscious, because obviously the aromatics are working on on the unconscious.
Your own subconscious.
Yeah.
You're feeling it too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to just ask you, in terms of the types of essential oils you use, because in the past there's been lots of discussion on contraindications, and I'm sure there are still some contraindications in terms of what you shouldn't use with certain dogs or certain times, perhaps with pregnant dogs, that sort of thing. But also, when I was much younger and I didn't know a lot about working with dogs, I always used to read that you should use hydrosols only with dogs because actual essential oils were too strong. So how do you feel about that? Do you think that was sort of being overcautious?
You know, it's a really good point, because I used to only work with essential oils until I learned about hydrosols. And actually now I'd say the dogs that I work with seem to select hydrosols a lot. I'd say maybe 60-40. I mean, again, that's a massive generalization, but yeah, I mean, for sure, essential oils for some dogs can be too strong, which is, you know, if they are on medication, I would then go in with hydrosols because they're gentler and there is no known contraindications where there are with essential oils. So with someone that's starting out, hydrosols is actually a really beautiful place to start because it's safer, it's gentler, it's equally transformational. It's not that the hydrosols are less than on any level, they're just different. They're the water soluble parts of the plant, whereas the essential oils are the fat soluble. But the most important thing is that the dog can select, so that they are able to walk away. You're not imposing the oil, so you're not diffusing it in a room they can't get away from. You're not applying it topically if they haven't asked for it. So essential oils are absolutely safe as long as the dog is able to choose and move away. But yeah, if a dog is on lots of medication, or if they're quite frail, or they're just very sensitive, often you'll find if you offer, for example, lavender essential oil and lavender hydrosol, that dog may prefer to work with the hydrosol because it's just gentler. Yeah.
Okay.
And they'll guide their dose as well. So it's, you know, a lot of us, if I grab an oil, because when we're smelling essential oils, we'll literally stick it, we'll be like that, you know, smelling it with the bottle really near our nose. And we actually don't need to do that. We can work with it at a distance too, but some dogs will need quite a distance from an aromatic, you know, of course, because their sense of smell is so powerful, and they work energetically with them as well, not just through olfaction. Some dogs will want the oil about 2 meters away, if not a little bit further. So they just want it in their energy field. Others will be right on top. And some dogs will sniff every oil, but it's not the actual act of the sniffing that we're looking at. It's how are they afterwards? What is different?
Yeah.
So that's why I prefer working with one oil at a time, particularly with people that are beginning, because otherwise it's overwhelming for us having so many aromas, and how do we know which one they're working with? But one of the most important things is again comes back to the listening. we need to really fine tune and get better at listening. So when we're working with one oil at a time, we can start to really slow down and really notice how the dog is responding and what has changed. Whereas if you have a lot of oils, you know, it can be a bit, wow, I don't know which one they're selecting. Are they so loving this one, but that one's over there, but because they love this one so much, they don't want to move away, you know? So it's, for me, it's about keeping it really simple.
2
really
meters,
simplifying.
quite a distance, isn't it? 2 meters. I mean, there's especially distance from the oils in there.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Still having an impact, yeah, on their system. And I think this listening as well, just to sort of hone in on this for those of you that might be watching this for the first time, I think the listening is really about observing subtle behaviours, isn't it? Very small changes that the dogs might do, which might be a yawn. I mean, in the work that I do, I'd be looking for something like a yawn, a bit of a lip lick, even a face turning away, head turning away, shift of body position as well. So subtle things like that that we may feel is just the dog getting comfortable again, or just what the dog does all the time, but it actually is a subtle sign that something has changed within their physiology.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll sometimes get a sigh, like a sigh, or you just see their muscles relax a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's you're right, it's fine. Some dogs will have really obvious signals. They'll go from wandering around to suddenly laying. You're like, wow, okay, that's a definite yes. Or they'll paw at the oil and they'll pull it towards a certain part of their body. Or they may start rolling, you know, and they're not rolling in it, but they're just rolling and releasing. So it's a really fun thing to do, even with no kind of intention. There doesn't have to be an issue for you to work with essential oils and hydrosols, because again, if our foundation is we're here to listen and see what the dog needs, it could be that it can be preventative as well.
Oh, brilliant.
We don't know if they're feeling a little bit out of kilter. We don't know if they've got a headache. We don't know if they're, you know, if they've learned to cope, or if we haven't recognized certain signs. Then if they're continuously selecting ginger or peppermint, then yeah, we know, okay, is there something going on with the diet? Is there's something not agreeing with them? So it can really help prevent things flaring up too.
That's really worth knowing. So just as a sort of a starter kit at home, what would you suggest that dog guardians look at purchasing so that they can start to do this a little bit at home?
Oh, blimey, that's such a tough question. But I will really, okay, so I'm going to limit myself.
Okay.
I'll limit myself to 5. Okay, so if we were to put 5 of the generally the most popular essential oils, vetiver.
Okay, vetiver.
Violet leaf, goodness me, I don't think I've met a dog that hasn't selected violet leaf. Right. Ginger, German chamomile, one of the chamomiles, so Roman or German chamomile. See, I'm already trying to add on here. And what would the last one be? Rose.
Oh, rose.
Yeah, rose or geranium. Yeah, it's really hard. It's really, but I guess keeping it small prevents overwhelm as well. Because even if you've just got frankincense, there's another one. How could you not be without frankincense? Even if you've just got a couple of don't get me started on oils, Caroline. But even if you've only got a couple at home, you can just start there, you know, and see how your dog responds. But of course, make sure they are high quality, they're not synthetic ones. That's another really important thing to mention. It's because there really are some really poor quality essential oils out there. It's a massive industry. Like all these things. So you have to really make sure that you're selecting oils that are good quality, because a lot of essential oils, especially your expensive ones, will be synthetic or have been adulterated. So just make sure you know your supplier.
Okay.
Everything, because they need to get the physical therapeutic properties. Otherwise, yeah, they're not going to be of any benefit.
So violet leaf isn't one that I'd heard of. Tell us a bit about that then. Why do you think lots of dogs like this?
Yeah, it's so curious. So actually violet leaf is an absolute. So it's the majority of essential oils are created through steam distillation. So that's blasting steam through a certain part of the plant, which then leaves the fat soluble parts of the plants floating on the water, which is the essential oil. But violet leaf is created through solvent extraction, just because it wouldn't work through steam distillation. So it's from the leaf of the violet flower. So very delicate flower. The absolute is a really dense, dark green color. So I guess smelling it, it's very earthy. It's very, very earthy. It's very close to nature. Of course, they all are, but it just has this depth to it. It is known for its analgesic properties. So a lot of dogs will lick it. Yeah, it's really hard to say, but it's just so popular with so many different dogs, for even, from puppies to end of life, at any age. It's just it seems to be one that really resonates with dog. The actual leaf is in the shape of a heart.
Oh, love that.
Yeah, so it's said to really be very comforting to the heart.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of people really hate it. They're like, oh, violet leaf, it's because it's just very green and earthy, maybe a little bit spinachy. But yeah,
that's so interesting. Maybe it is quite earthing and grounding for them.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do find a lot of dogs will go for the root oils. So ginger is from a rhizome, vetiver, well, it's a grass, but it's very grounding. The root what are the other root ones? Angelica root, valerian root, because they are very grounding. So if a dog is living in a home where there is a lot going on, and I don't just necessarily mean they have a busy household, but if they have a person that's very busy in their heads, the dog will select stuff that's really brings them back to that grounding place.
Yeah, well, this correlates with, I think, why feeding them fresh food supports them, because that's much more grounding for them. And it supports every physiological system that is aiming to ground them. Yeah, definitely. And within the canine flow work that that I do as well, there's a lot of grounding involved, because a lot of dog behavior work and training is stopping them from being able to ground in the way that they would do normally as a canine being. So then to take on the oils that ground them, they're going to be very attracted to those, because they've got this need to release their energy.
Yeah, absolutely.
We will mention contraindications as well. Out of those 5 oils that you just said, I'm guessing there probably aren't any, really.
Actually, I can't for the life of me remember off the top of my head. I know German chamomile, there is contraindications, but I couldn't say which drugs. So I would say if your dog is on drugs, I wouldn't offer German chamomile. Maybe go with hydrosol.
Okay, brilliant. So just going back to reactive dogs, I think this is something that obviously it's quite worrying, isn't it? It's something that we don't want to see happen in our dogs, and it is, I feel, very misunderstood as well as a behaviour. So if a dog guardian's watching this now and their dog is a bit reactive, I'm not going to say aggressive, but let's just say that the sort of thing that embarrasses you and that you don't know how to fix, and this is ultimately what the brain wants to do initially, is to fix. So the dog is barking and going towards the end of the lead, the lunging at other dogs, or the appearing to be aggressive when actually probably what they want to do is ground on the other dog. But how would we approach that from your botanical self-healing point of view?
So I would go in asking the dog questions, of course. So I would always check in with pain.
Absolutely, good point.
Yeah, I'd always check. That would be one thing that I would want to. And there are different, again, some dogs will select wintergreen or birch, which is something like 98% methyl salicylates, which is what's in aspirin. So some dogs will select those oils, some will select yarrow, some will go for ginger. yeah, we'd always check in with pain, St. John's wort. Again, obviously be very mindful of contraindications with that one. I wouldn't offer if the dog is on meds. So I'd want to rule out pain, because that really is often with reactives, even younger dogs. You know, maybe they've just been spayed recently and we think, oh, you know, once they finish their anti-inflammatory medication, they're fine. But you know, the scar tissue, the discomfort can be there for quite some time. So I'd want to rule that out. I personally would always start with helping the dog ground. So I would offer things like violet leaf, vetiver, ginger, and then you could look at, is there any stress going on in the home in general? So I would definitely be offering the Guardian some essential oils.
Yeah.
Because that's a great starting point, especially if they select something and then the dog relaxes, you know, that's huge information. So I always do that my way too. And if there's any trauma as well, so you have things like rose or yarrow or linden blossom, there's any trust issues that you could offer. But essentially, my first session, I would just keep it really simple, and I'd open up the conversation with the dog and say, where do you want to go? Because that people that have a dog that's reactive, they're generally at the end of their tether, aren't they? They're, you know, it's challenging. You just want a dog that you can take on a nice walk, right? And then you can relax. So they'll be feeling frustrated too. So having a session where you feel supported and where you're actually working with your dog and you're all working together, it just helps remove that that feeling of helplessness, that feeling of frustration. Yeah. And then actually that in itself sometimes can shift something. Is that you're working together with your dog. It's very hard to say what oils are going to work for activity, because that's, you know, individual. How long is a piece of, it's so individual. So I'd always come back to just start the process of starting to listen to your dog. And you don't necessarily, I wouldn't necessarily go out and work in the moment when the dog is being reactive. I'd actually just work at home. Yeah, you know, and I would do it on a daily basis. Start making this a part of your normal day, or, you know, a couple of times a week. Just be in this space and say to your dog, okay, let's explore, let's see what aromatics you want to work with. And that in itself will have an impact, because, you know, even if it's just you're generally reducing their stress levels, then that's going to ripple out to how they feel outside. I remember my boy Baxter, he was a rescue dog, and I think we'd had him for about 6 months. And there was an incident where we lived at the time. We had a detached property that was on a corner, and we'd taken him out just to go for a short walk, and someone had come around the corner and it was dusk, and he started lunging and barking, and obviously we tightened the lead, we didn't know who it was. So we kind of anchored this fear or this reactivity every time we went out the front door. And up until that point, actually, I'd only really worked with the essential oils inside. I didn't know how effective they would be outside, because obviously, you know, they disperse into the air quite quickly. But I thought, you know, I'm going to go and just work on the lawn, the front lawn with him. And I took out a couple of his favorite essential oils, which I think actually was jasmine, Roman chamomile, and violet leaf. And he really released on the front lawn. It was fascinating. He was working with them through inhalation, and then he did loads of rolling around, and then just this massive sigh, and just flopped on his side in the garden. And I remember seeing, and it was so perfect, because a person then walked past, and then we had a cat, and then a person with a dog, and I was thinking, oh God, he's going to kick off. And he was just like, hello. And from that point forward, he was fine moving. So sometimes we just need to change the energy around a situation, and then no longer it ceases to be there. Not always, but that it can happen.
I think this is really key. A lot of the work that I do, and Caroline Wilkinson, I spoke to her about barking dogs on another of our Naked Truths, actually.
Oh yeah.
series. It's about working with the dog outside of the situation, because what you want to do is change the dog, not the situation. And I think this is where how we're now starting to view dogs really is shifting, and we're understanding them more as a feeling being, rather than how can we just manage the situation. And you know, sometimes you do still need management techniques in a situation, but changing the dog, not the situation, I think is a big factor in what you're doing as well. So it's all sort of tying in, you know. And I think definitely, I mean, I've mentioned it already, but feeding fresh food changes the dog for the better. You know, they have all the nutrients that support them to feel happier, to deal with over excess of hormones that might be in their system. You know, and all this supports them in terms of emotions and feelings, and then how they're going to act. So, you know, it's absolutely fantastic to be able to speak to you about yet another way that we can support our dogs alongside fresh food feeding. So, absolutely. And you're a big fan of fresh food feeding.
Oh yes. Anyway.
Yeah. So just maybe just a little bit more information about maybe some other dogs that you've been working with recently, you've been able to support. Maybe we did mention Itchy at the beginning of our conversation, so let's just come full circle down to Itchy, actually, if you
can. I mean, yeah, it's so common, isn't it? It's so common. And of course, I mean, it's a minefield. It's kind of a session in itself, isn't it? Or a conversation in itself, Itchy dogs. But essential oils can support them in so many different ways, from physically. So if the dog is just has an itch, you know, if we're not looking at the underlying cause, certain ones like German chamomile or lavender, can't think of anything else at the top of my head. They're the main ones that are coming to me. Applied topically, of course, if the dog has selected this, can help take that itch away. Or green clay. I mean, I wouldn't be without green clay, but that's obviously not an aromatic, but it is something that I work with a lot. So applied topically can, if the dog has selected, and this is really important, can just help remove that itch and soothe and calm the skin. But obviously we know that itch obviously is often gut related. It's also stress related. So a lot of the dogs that I work with is very much stress, which again, it's another broad label for lots of different behaviors and experiences and responses. But one dog I remember working with quite a few years ago, but again, it's always these dogs that you remember because they change how you work so dramatically. And I think it's a good example to explain also why it's so important that we listen, as opposed to, oh, I've got these oils that are going to help you and let's do this to you. This lady had called me. She was in a right state, bless her. One of her dogs was a show dog. She was quite high up in the world of showing, and she'd had this explosion of blisters on her all over her muzzle. And so she was pawing at it and scratching, and then they burst, and then she'd get, you know, so the lady was very upset, and obviously the dog was highly stressed. So actually this session was kind of from her perspective, an emergency session. I didn't really have much prep at all. And she sent me some photos showing me, and I'm thinking, oh wow, green clay would be amazing for that, because it looks so irritated. The dog just looked really uncomfortable. And I walked into the house with the dog thinking, oh, this dog's going to need green clay, thinking it'll be a really easy session. And as soon as the dog saw me, she went and hid under the table. So I'd opened the bag of green clay and she went and hid, and I was like, goodness me, that's quite a reaction. She says she doesn't normally do that. She's generally very sociable with people. I thought, God, that's fascinating. So I thought, I'm going to take a step back, and it gave the lady time to really explain that the dog had had a very stressful week. She'd fallen off the grooming table. She'd been microchipped. And there was something else that had gone on. So the dog had an intense amount of stress that week. She'd been trying antibiotics and just nothing. She had a cream for the nose, and it was just, she had a cone. So I went in with the green clay, and she'd run under the table. And I thought, wow, okay, that's not what I was expecting. So I had to really sit back, and I just remember saying out loud to the dog, sorry, first of all, for assuming I know what you need. Secondly, let's just take your time and let's see what you select. And she ended up, I started with Violet Leaf and I had it at a bit of a distance, and she was just really relaxing into it under the table. And I could just feel everything in the room shift, you know, it was just like okay. And she selected probably about 3 different essential oils and then just slept. I mean, we were only working with them for about half an hour, and then she just lay down and fell asleep. I thought, okay, end of session. Just gave us time to have a conversation. And I had no clue whether it was going to have any impact or not, because obviously she'd only inhaled the essential oils. And a few days later, the lady contacted me and sent me a photograph of her nose, and all the blisters had gone. And it just was cool. It wasn't pink and angry.
Yeah.
It really cooled down. And then I think within 10 days or 2 weeks, the hair was growing back. It just looked so beautiful. But I think it's just such a perfect example of how emotional responses, or how the dog's feeling emotionally, can manifest physically.
Yeah.
If we go in with that, oh, I know what you need, some dogs will very quickly just switch off or shut down or not communicate to you, because you've gone in with that, well, I know what you need.
Yeah.
So it was just really a fascinating learning curve for me to recognize that, strip it back, and let's just work together and see what you need. And I think it was Roman Chamomile, Violet Leaf, and one other. So they really were very much working emotionally, energetically, as opposed to her actually ingesting the oils, which some dogs will do, but for the most part they work through inhalation. And I had another incident, again, a dog that the lady was a dog trainer, really beautiful relationship between the dog and the guardian, and she had a lot of hair loss in her, so the back half of her body was pretty much bald. And this has been like this for months.
Yeah.
Months and months and months. And she really knew her stuff. She worked holistically. She was fresh fed. She did all the things, all the right things. And it was a day after a workshop, and I thought, again, I don't know how this is going to support, but let's see what happens. And it was just one session, and she selected Rose, Otto, frankincense. She was a very busy little dog because she was a working spaniel, so she just kind of ping-ponged around the room. But when we got the key oil, it was frankincense. She just lay down, and the guardian was like, she never does that. She never does that in this space. And we sat for about an hour, all of us just sitting with, I think it was Rose, Otto, frankincense, and one other. And it was a really beautiful experience for all of us, just to be, to just observe her self-medicating. And again, I think 2 months later, she sent me a photograph and the hair had grown back. And I was like, I can't say what has happened. I don't know, but something has shifted, that the dog is, that. And again, she didn't ingest anything. We were working through inhalation. So yeah, that's one of my passions, really, is working with the emotions.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, she did take that in, but just not in the way that we would usually imagine molecule meets molecule change occurs. It's happening on that vibratory level. But we do know now through quantum biology, it's been utterly proven that scent isn't a molecule kind of key fits a lock. We know that now. That's old history way of thinking. It is actually happening because the molecules have a weight and a shape to them, and that weight and shape creates a certain vibration. So this is why almond and cyanide, even though they have a different molecular shape and weight to them, the shape and weight of almond and the shape and weight of cyanide end up with the same frequency. So same. Yeah. So in a way, this way of understanding that things go in and they have to be ingested to make a difference, that your work proves that isn't the case, And I think what it also, it's reminding me of as well is what's very popular at the moment with itchy dogs and allergy dogs is to do an elimination diet. And it's something that takes weeks and weeks and months and can go on. And doing this, you're almost in a way using your intuition to eliminate the ones that they don't need and bring in the oils that they do. And so you're finding out what is really going to support them in a shorter space of time in terms of essential oils, not necessarily proteins, but that way of thinking. So it saves you having to go and try this and try that and buy this and buy that, because you're actually honing in during that session on what it is specifically at that time the dog needs. But as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm pretty sure having done workshops with you before and understanding it, that it could be that spaniel needed frankincense there and then, but they might never need frankincense again. So it is that deep understanding that things shift in the body, and then you're onto the new layer of emotion that the dog might present.
Yeah, and it does constantly evolve. I do find that, like us, will have a favourite. I think yours is bergamot, isn't it? Have I got that right? Is it still bergamot?
Yeah, I still quite like that. I would say it was my favourite for that period of time.
Okay.
That whole couple of years. Yeah.
But yeah, I do. I mean, for me, I love peppermint. I love anything that's to do with the breath. So anything that kind of really expands the breath. So Ravensara and rosemary and eucalyptus, and they have been my favorites from day one. But there will be some dogs, they will have their favorite forever, like they have their favorite person or they have their favorite foods. I call them their allies, you know. They're in their close circle of friends. They tend to.
Yes.
Yeah, so you can really identify with dogs who was in their close circle, and it's often normally, you know, just 2 or 3, and they will invariably like those forever, really, just because they feel good, or there's something about them that really resonates with them. And then you have like another circle that I guess would be your acquaintances that they will bring in certain situations. For example, if they struggle in the car or going to the vets. And they don't have like a deep personal relationship with them, but they have, they're kind of forms that they'll come and dip in and out of. And then there's like an outer circle, which I guess is sort of those you recognize someone on the streets, but you don't necessarily have a relationship with, but they will still very occasionally work with. So I kind of see it like this.
Yeah. That's really
how they connect with them.
Yeah, it's a great way.
And it changes, of course.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Well, thank you so much. And what I will say as well to those of you watching, if you have questions, which I'm sure there's going to be lots of, do post them in the comments below, and Rachel and I will get to those. Absolutely. I will make sure that they get answered for you, because there's just this huge scope in terms of what can be supported through the use of essential oils, and understanding how to use them, and the odd times that they may not be suitable. As you mentioned, certain medications, for instance, might not correlate with certain oils. So thank you so much to Rachel today.
You're welcome.
And just share with everyone if you have any dog guardian courses that they might be able to just drop in and find out a little bit more about this, or perhaps you're opening up to in-person workshops now, or what's the plan?
Yeah, so obviously with the pandemic, I shifted everything online, which really for me was the best thing, because it meant that more people can access this. So I have an accredited practitioner course. The next one starts April 2022, and that's all online. I do also I haven't got set a date for this, for the second one, but I'm also running a 6-month online course, which is called Botanical Self-Healing Progressive Program. And that's for people that have a basic understanding. They understand that dogs self-medicate and they've done a little bit, but they really want to go deeply, and they want to start working more intuitively. They really want to start embodying and getting to know the aromatics themselves. So they're working at this beautiful unit with their dog. So they're the 2 ones that I'm running at the moment. And of course, I've got my online shop as well.
Okay, so your store has some oils in it. Brilliant.
Yeah.
People can purchase. Okay, and if you do maybe you have a mailing list, because I'm just thinking if there's some dog guardians out there that just, you know, they maybe don't want to take a 6-month program, but they just want to dip in and find out a little bit more, make sure they're doing things correctly for their dog. Maybe on the mailing list, and if you do that, then
yeah, definitely
let them know.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So Animal Matters.
My Animal Matters.
My Animal Matters.
Animal Matters will take you somewhere else probably.
Okay. So myanimalmatters.com.
.co.uk.
UK, right, we'll get there. I should post that, myanimalmatters.co.uk.
That's it.
Yeah, okay, brilliant. All right, well, do come back for more Naked Truth series, Canine Conversations as They Should Be. We have interviewed some fantastic people in this series. We actually, Rachel, you will love this. Chris Kent, she just recently won the award, My Animal Hero Award, for connected with the Daily Mirror. And she works, it's the whole conversation that we recorded in the interview was dogs and mental health. So how dogs support us to feel great, basically, rather than the other way around, we've been really talking about with you today. So although there's correlations, of course, and Chris is a coach and works a lot with young people and teenagers, and her rescue dogs really support those teenagers to find confidence in life and to move on with life and perhaps find jobs where they didn't have the confidence before and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's absolutely fascinating.
Wow.
No wonder she has won the award. She's done really, really well. So that's in the series. Also First Aid for Dogs with Rachel Bean as well. So there's lots and lots to learn on this Canine Conversations as They Should Be Naked Truth series with Naked Dogs. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on another episode.